I don't know if I ever told you this story, but back in about 2018, 2019, Vancouver was a wild time. Like, it's hard to understand if you've never been into Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, but it's like this city that wants to be a big city so bad, you know? And it was trying so hard to be California and trying so hard. And it isn't the city, you know, it's all these like corporate offices that are in the downtown core. And all the cruise ships would come in. It was like teeming with tourists, and it was a wild place. But Lululemon would have like these yoga mat, like 200 people would show up at lunch to do yoga right downtown, like right in the business district and stuff like that. Like, it was really wild, and there was stuff like that went on. Now, Vancouver, up until, you know, pre-COVID and stuff, I mean, it started to get bad, and the fentanyl wasn't really running as hard as it is now. But yeah, it was a pretty magical time, the kind of things that would happen. And it was just starting to shift, you know, everything was starting to change. Everybody was trying to work for Facebook or Google or Microsoft, or, you know, everybody wanted to get down to the States, big money down there. We were surfing this wave, you know. And I think it was a wild time to be down there and just to see how crazy it was. And there was all sorts of indicators of how disconnected from reality everyone really was. Like, screens are terrible things. Screens control your reality. Like, think of how many memories you've had that have come from screens, movies you've liked. And it's everywhere. We think about it all the time. Like, it's no big deal. Like, oh, yeah, look at these screens, you know, remember that show, and da-da-da. It's not real. None of it's real. We're talking about things that come to us on screens. And I mean, with video games, it's kind of the same thing, and it's kind of exactly the same thing. And we sacrifice our life for screens, for what we see on a screen. And you know, that shapes your reality. You know, like these screens, I think about that sometimes, like how many of my memories have come from screens. Like, a lot of us were raised by, well, Generation X, they were, you know, the latchkey kids and whatever. We were the ones who were raised by television. And then pretty quickly it like shifted over. Because I remember, you know, don't sit too close to the TV. It doesn't work too well with the VR headsets. But yeah, you got to think about all these screens and how it's affected us and made us so different. But back then it wasn't, you know, it was still thought of as being more VR, right? Back, you know, 2018, 2019. It was still exciting. VR was there. It was this thing we've been talking about. It was kind of retro and futuristic at the same time. We were wondering how it was going to manifest. It was neat. But there was indicators, like the yoga thing, like the people totally disconnected from reality who were just starting to go down this rabbit hole where, you know, black is white and up is down, and your complete worldview is controlled by the screen. So they were just going right into that, right? You know, about a year before COVID, 2 years before COVID. And I remember I was downtown, and there's a place called Waterfront Street Station. It's really beautiful. It's iconic. You've seen it a million times in TV shows. It's this brick building with columns in front of it. It looks a little bit 1920s because it's Vancouver. It's a young city. But it's a beautiful thing. It's a gorgeous war monument at the end with like an angel and a soldier. It's brilliant. It's a great place. And in the middle of this place, you see, since this is the end of the SkyTrain line and it's the downtown district, so this is a very hustly, bustly neighborhood. You know what I mean? There's a lot of traffic here. It's right on Granville Street, which is about downtown central Main Street as you can get for Vancouver. And you're just at the edge of Hastings and the bad part of Vancouver. So this is a real nexus point, this Waterfront Street Station. If you ever go there, you'll see exactly what I mean. The minute you step outside, look at the streets and everything. And there's Harbor Center, like directly above you, which is that big UFO-looking building you always see in the Vancouver pictures. That's where we're talking about. At the base of that round building is where this happened. And I walked out there, and there was a guy there. And you got to understand, in Vancouver, we didn't have a ton of these, you know, screaming crazies. It wasn't our homeless situation isn't like that. Like when I went to the States for the first time and saw what real poverty and what bad areas of cities are like, yeah, it's a totally different animal in Vancouver. Like people in Vancouver don't understand that. Now they probably do. Now it's gotten desperate enough. But back then, nobody did. So crazies weren't common. They were kind of not something we dealt with. But I guess we'd started to. But there was this guy, and he was wearing rags. And he was obviously, you know, mentally disturbed. Like he's clearly sick. And he needed help. So what he did is now he's wearing these like burlap pants and this like kind of cotton shirt. Maybe they were jeans. But he would kneel on the concrete. No hat, nothing like that. He would just kneel there and let out this cultivated, blood-curdling howl, like this soul cry. It was remarkable, this scream he would let go. It was like, I can't even do it. It was, and it would echo off the towers, and it would bounce around the streets, and it was incredible, the sound of this thing. And I used to go through there every day, and this guy would be there. And then he was there for about a week, 2 weeks, and he would disappear, and then he'd come back. But I always remembered this guy because of the scream he would let go. It was like total anguish, you know. And the best part, there's a couple great things about it. The scream itself was incredible. Like, it was an incredible spectacle. And then you catch yourself thinking, Jesus, I mean, this guy, you know, you can't hear a more desperate cry for help than that. You know, and I'm thinking about making an MP3 out of this for a ringtone. You know, what does that say about me and our culture? But you can't really step up because clearly this guy's mentally disturbed. And there's like literally thousands of people who don't even acknowledge this is happening. That's the best part, is that this guy's kneeling right in front of this station, right? So he's just losing his like this, and it's an amazing howl, like you gotta admit. And everyone's like trying not to notice, right? They're kind of like keeping their heads down, and they're like, no, this isn't a thing. This isn't what's actually happening here. I'm not part of this. And for some reason, I found that really funny. Like, I don't know what that says about me as a person. Not that this guy was in anguish. I mean, clearly, you know, and it's Vancouver. Like, at that time, this guy probably got, you know, taken away and brought to an institution, and he's fine. Okay, the guy's fine. But, I mean, and he really worked on that scream. Like, that wasn't like an impromptu, like this howl this guy let go. But I always thought of that guy because it was like our total inhumanity to each other. You know, can you think of a more like, why does that happen? I mean, you know, you think if you went to some small town somewhere and that happened, people would go, oh my gosh, what's wrong with this poor man? You know what I mean? And they try to help him. But the minute we get together in these huge cities and these metropolises and everyone's afraid of everyone, that's the thing about Vancouver. Everyone is afraid of everyone else. For a place that's supposed to be so safe, everyone is terrified all the time. Very weird city. But, yeah, I think about him from time to time, you know, just because of the inhumanity to man thing, you know, how did we get to this point? How did we get here? You know? I mean, this is World Breach Report number 31. I'm your host, Sean, from Sean Hunt's Monsters, and we're talking about the world breach, the breaking out of the chains that kind of hold us, like that guy. You know, I mean, you look at this objectively, why didn't anyone help that dude? Well, I mean, what are you going to do? Well, what are you? Well, I don't know. Go up and say, hey, man, are you okay? What's going on here? And then you realize that it's a huge saga of drama, and it's a big mess, and there's no real helping it, and it just winds up, you know, and that's why people don't do it, because it's a huge hassle. And nobody really wants to really commit to helping someone, you know what I mean, if somebody walked by and saw that guy there and was like, no, I'm going to fix this guy. Could happen. But I mean, you know, how do you deal with people that have like, they believe things that you don't believe, right? Maybe this guy thought that there were bugs in his brain. I have no idea. Or you meet these people who believe, well, they believe in Sasquatch. I can hang out with those crowds. But then you meet people who believe in, like, I don't know, the mainstream narrative, what everybody's supposed, the story of reality, not there is no such thing as Bigfoot, aliens aren't real. There was a terrible disease that came about from Wuhan and those numbers, and masking saved everyone, and yeah, all that stuff. The guys who literally buy that, all that stuff. And unfortunately, if you're like me, if you're watching this show, you'll realize that you're drifting further and further away from this mainstream narrative. Like you're not part of that. And now, like, we used to have, like, people used to talk about what the TV shows that were on last night, because there was only like 12 channels, and so everyone's probably watching the Jack Benny show. So the next day people was like, oh, did you watch the Jack Benny show? Oh, yeah. Now we do it with sports, because there's only one event and everybody watches it, right? But it used to be like that for TV shows. And you see, like, now, there's so many channels that nobody's watching the same thing. You couldn't even talk about it. You're like, hey, did you watch my weird Korean anime thing? No, I didn't. I was too busy watching my weird UFO Bigfoot thing. And what were you watching? I was watching my weird thing. And everybody's on their own wavelength. Makes you a lot easier to control. That's for sure. Makes it a lot easier for you to be, well, manipulated. And that's kind of what it's about. Think about, like, all the status that you have in your life, like everything, like who you are right now. Like whoever you are, you're talking to you, whatever that concept of you is. And maybe you're not in a place where you're able to go, well, shit, who am I? Like, am I what everybody told me I was? Am I this name that my parents gave me? And now I'm this person. And you're like, yeah, like, well, who else would you be? Right? But I mean, I'm not trying to, cause a rift in the brain or whatever, but I'm just saying, like, sure, you have a name and you're identified and stuff like that, but how much of your life is really, I mean, you make choices every day, which is another, like, that's a whole other thing about the choices we make. I'm not a predestined guy. I'm not like, there's a fate and, everything's ordained, and no, that's all bullshit. I don't buy that at all for a minute. Because if it was that way, if it was all this fate and it was all ordained, there wouldn't be this much suffering. There wouldn't be this much struggling, right? It wouldn't be like that. You'd have, like, people are struggling for control. There's a battle right now. I mean, I don't know who the sides are. I don't know who's right or who's wrong, but I'm just saying that, you look at the world, clearly there's some kind of a struggle happening right now. So all we really have is, what we believe about ourselves, about the world around us, about reality. And so, the narrative, the consensus of mainstream reality, that's what everybody's talking about. That's what everybody wants to control. That's the narrative, right? They want to control that. And same with when, the last disease went through and the governmental assassinations, and now they're really cranking it up, right? They want to see who's got control, like what can we do with this control? And people are so fractured now that you have multiple groups. Like, okay, so living in Vancouver, you've got many, many, many different cultural groups here. We've brought in more immigrants than any other country in the world. And what's happened is that you have these pockets of culture. It's like suddenly imagine like a patchwork quilt where you have like, because whenever people go into a foreign country, they ghettoize. That's just what people do. Humans will do that. If you go to, like, you get two Irish guys that are in a bar, by the end of the night, they'll be drinking at the same table. Society's like that. It's like you ghettoize. So you make this, you don't actually make a ghetto, but you kind of clump together And, like Koreans will drink with Koreans, the Canadians will talk, because the language is the same, you're far from home. Makes sense, right? It's like, oh, hey, it's like when you go to Russia and hey, at McDonald's, I'll have a burger. Is it because you really love McDonald's? No, because it's familiar, right? So this is why this happens. So what happens is when you have a large immigrant community that comes in from different countries, you wind up with these little patchwork, like nations type things. And it makes for some wild social situations, let me tell you. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that it's currently, like, I don't think it's ever been done. I think they're trying to experiment with it. It's pretty trying. I mean, there's a lot of friction because, a lot of the people that have, there's a lot of people that come from poor countries, a lot of desperate people who want to get ahead. And when you get a situation like that where you have, like, really rabid competition from people who are, dedicated to getting ahead, you're going to, that's when, morals and ethics get a little bit slippery and you can wind up with, like, exploitation. People can get hurt. It's not good. But this is, it can't be argued that when you look at the last 10 years, 15 years even, since that guy was kneeling on the street screaming, what's happened to Western Canada? What's happened to, like, the West, I suppose? England has completely fallen, and now we've got a situation where no one's really in control of Canada. Like, we're wondering who's got control of this place. And it's all being controlled by, like, some sort of shadow puppet regime linked to China. Like, nobody really knows who's in control. I mean, sure, there's the narrative and stuff, but... And isn't it the same thing in the States? I mean, for the record, I like Donald Trump. I do. I mean... I shouldn't say that because now, I've just alienated like half my audience. But as a Canadian, you got to understand that it's not, I think he's funny. I mean, then everything started going crazy. I remember when he first started to run and I was on Facebook and I made this comment about Trump. I'm like, that'll be great. We can have him and Putin fight in the WWE because it was crazy. It's still crazy to this day. It's nuts. It's the craziest thing ever. It's idiocracy come to life. But, that was just the real beginning of understanding of what political hatred was. And you begin to realize that, holy cow, this political stuff is powerful. Like, people commit genocide over this stuff. Like, people kill other people for this stuff. It's a belief structure. And if you're not part of that belief structure, you're like, you could be declared part of the enemy and they'll frame it all up. And before you know it, you got a bunch of students beating you to death with signs, right? It's happened. It's happened all over the world. And now we're in a situation where it feels like, the snow globe is getting shook. Everything's destabilizing. And all the snowflakes are floating around and everybody's just trying to survive. And you're all like, oh, hang on, hang on, hang on. And usually when that's happening, it's when there's a bunch of other stuff that's going on in the background that you don't get to see. So then the snow globe stops shaking and then all the snow settles and you wind up looking at the city and you get to see what the landscape looks like. And generally, whenever that snow globe stops shaking, you don't really like the scene that the snow globe shows you. 9/11 was like that. They shook it up. Didn't like the scene after that, the Patriot Act and everything. And then after 2012, it could be argued, maybe the world did end in 2012. Like, that was the last of the good years. And now it's all like this weird slide where all these different powers are making plays for it. And the only reason why we're stressed about this, the only reason why we even care about this, is because of screens. Screens. It's all screens. You turn off your phone, turn off the internet, go outside, touch grass, as they say. It's not real. And you'd be like, how can you say that? There's all these problems that are in the world. No, none of them matter. No, they'll be here whether or not you're here. This is a chemically, psychologically engineered thing to garner your attention. That's all this is. All the news, all the media, the UFO thing. Yeah. If you're into UFOs and you stumble into this world, wow, it'll hold your attention for days. But after a while, you start to realize that, there's no answers here. It's just circles and circles and circles and circles. It's a format for all the old books, all these books that are behind me. It's the same thing they're talking about now. There's nothing new. There's a few revelations that allow you to make, connections that weren't there before. But very quickly you come to the conclusion that, yeah, we're being farmed. I mean, call it a zoo, call it a farm, call it something, but we're being managed for sure. For sure. And a lot of people aren't going to really be happy about that. That's a secret that nobody wants to get out. And you know it. You know it. It's not whether or not you're managed. It's like, who are you managed by? Do you think you're managed by, like, the tyrannical, oligarchs of the world? Is it the Bilderbergs? Is it the lizard people? Is it interdimensional creatures that are aliens? Does it matter? I mean, it would explain some of the ethics, I suppose. And I do wonder, if there was this weird science we don't understand regarding consciousness, if that was a real thing, that would explain why the most rich and powerful are doing all these weird rituals, wearing robes and stuff. Like, but again, this is all information I get from where? Screens. It's all coming from screens. I'm talking to you right now on a screen. So I guess, the bad with the good, you think about all the good things that books have done and all the bad things books have done. You think about all the good that radio's done and all the bad that radio's done. Does it balance out? I like to think so. I like to think that there is, because as we've discussed before, there's good and evil, right? So you got to try to do the good stuff. You got to try to do the good things. But the choices you make in your life. But the problem is that we're all so damn busy. We're all so overwhelmed all the time. If you've got kids and stuff and you're like trying to live your life, you're just trying to get paychecks on the table, you're just trying to do this, trying to do that, trying to survive. I'm not calling it down. I'm there with you, man. I know what it is. And we should all be meditating, right? It takes 15 minutes a day, to meditate. And you try to do that, and it's like, it seems like there's external forces that are somehow stopping you. It's like the Truman Show. And I've given this a little bit of thought, about the whole, like, keeping a model, just a general model now. But I think that whatever this reality is right now, which is you're watching me in the past, but this is a new idea which I'm giving you, and anyway, whatever. But the point is the now, the right now, the now that, when you hear this, not when I'm saying it, or when I'm saying it now. But anyway, that moment must, if nothing else, be a spectacle. Like, you've got all these different conscious entities that are on the planet. You've got all this stuff that's going on. You've got all this intrigue of, like, beings. Even if it's souls, if there's like an ethereal realm or a non-ethereal realm or whatever. Okay, so like on the physical level and on a spiritual level, if you can want to call it that, or on an interdimensional level, maybe you're more comfortable with that. It's a spectacle. If there are creatures or there's beings that exist in like the astral plane or in the morphic resonance field or on the grassy hill or wherever these places are, they must be watching this here now. They must be watching our reality, And we know that when you observe something, you change it. So it kind of changes the whole viewpoint on good and evil too, doesn't it? I mean, it kind of changes, like, if all you're doing is watching TV, you're not much of a spectacle, are you? Like, it'd be like watching paint dry. But if you're trying to do stuff in your life, like if you're trying to make a change, like I'm going to start a company that makes ladders. I'm going to make a better ladder. They're going to be lighter and stronger, and I'll be able to use them. And yeah, they're going to be called assault ladders. That's what I'm going to do. So the minute you try to do that, there's going to be all this stuff that like rails against you. There'll be things that pop up, and it feels like the easiest thing to do is to just sit back down. And it's like we're all slaves somehow in this reality. We're all on oars and we're pulling. And if you try to move or shift or go somewhere or try something new or be bold, you get the whip from the slave master who's getting everybody to row. And it's like you can't feel the whip, because you got to think like, what if all the guys who were rowing went, wait a minute, you can't whip us, dude. Like, that's not on. Well, they take over the ship. That's mutiny, right? So I think that that's what they're trying to stop, is they're trying to stop a mutiny. I think that there's whatever forces are in control that are trying to, be the manipulating overlords or whatever. I think they're terrified of humans like you and I, monster hunters, the others, as I like to call them, becoming aware of just how powerful you as an individual are. With every single choice you make, if you just turn off the screens and start doing really anything, coloring, anything, but just start doing stuff in your own life rather than being online. Try it. You'll be surprised the kind of weird stuff that happens when you start doing stuff. And especially if the things you do, especially if they're like creatively good, and I can speak to this from my own personal experiences. I spent a lot of time talking into microphones and without much of a plan, And I just try to connect. I try to talk up the positive, despite, the cascading hellscape that Western world has kind of become. But, I try to talk up the positive. I mean, that's a good thing. I buy a motorcycle. I don't know. No, it's a good idea. I mean, I think that you need to be aware that not everything's all love and roses. And we'd like to help the screaming kneelers of the world. But how do you even start? It's like we're so off balance and so destabilized. And that's, again, by design, by whatever these forces are that are trying to stop us from mutinying from our rowing on our oars of the ship. So this is where it is. So you'll stand up and you'll get the whip. But the whip isn't obvious. You don't know where it's coming from. It's like, oh, that's really strange. I tried to do something different. My car broke down. That can't possibly be related. And then if you actually look at occult ritual magic teachings and stuff like that, that's exactly the model they teach it is. It's like, yeah, your consciousness totally creates reality. Everything manifests and blah, 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 blah. And, I don't know if I believe that, but there are people who believe that have gotten results doing that very thing. And now we're learning this about UFOs, where consciousness is tied in with this. So you got to think, where does that leave us? That you can, go wandering off into a darkness and try not to think about it. But if you can think about it, where does that leave us? Where are we here now? Consciousness is a thing that makes you unique. You are important. You are powerful. And you're yeah, I'm real powerful over here, man. Check out how powerful I am. I'm in debt. I got nothing. Yeah, but you have choices. You can do things. Even if you stand up, you can take another step, even if you get whipped in the face. You see what I mean? If you accept your circumstances and be okay, well, what if I just manifested, the past wasn't real and I could do anything? What would I do? What if you step outside of yourself, make yourself a character, do that role-playing game sheet, where you write out your name and all your skills. You'd be surprised how many skills you had when you write out all your skills like it's a role-playing game sheet. And, see what you actually look like. And then look at this weird Call of Cthulhu H.P. Lovecraft world we live in, assuming that, there's cannibalistic overlord weird cultists that are running the show that may or may not be worshipping legitimately strange elder gods. Maybe that's a thing. It seems that kind of way. And then invariably you'll come to the conclusion you should get a motorcycle, which will lead you invariably to buy a TW200. You're welcome. But honestly, yeah, in order to awaken, you have to get out of the screens. You have to leave the matrix. And the way to do that is to stop watching the screens. If you stop watching the screens, you're going to have memories that are created in the real world with real people that you have to go interact with. And if it's lonely and it sucks and you're alone, that's a sign you need to go out and meet people. Maybe take a month to kind of, detox and see where you're at. But there's too many people that are too concerned with stuff that has nothing to do with them. And it's this weird addiction that's all coming from these screens. Now, aside from this huge thing being a huge, ad to buy a motorcycle so you don't wind up screaming, I think that there is something more to the control of this conscious reality, the narrative that we have going on right now. And like so many other times in history, when there's 9/11 happened and when COVID was happening and all these things, you can kind of tell that something's off. Like what you're hearing is not reality. Like this isn't the real story, you know? And for me, when I look at that, I think about, you know, those old maps where it would say, you know, here be dragons. And I think that's where the monster hunters belong. Is we need to stretch out into these areas where other people are afraid to tread. We need to look at things differently. We've never really fit in. We've always been like, well, like I said, the others. Others like me. You know? If I went out and got eaten by Bigfoot tomorrow, right? Would I be the last one to ever look for Bigfoot? No, not even close. There's others. All the others would come. Maybe they'd know me. Some would, some wouldn't. Most of them wouldn't. But there's always others. Those of us that generally get othered anyway, you know, you're kind of the weirdo who's into stuff that you can't stop thinking about. It's a splinter in your brain. You're just, what are these people seeing in the woods? Where are the hikers going? What is going on with the UFO thing? What is happening with consciousness? Why are there orbs? Maybe some of these things or all of these things. But you're not alone. There are others. There are those of us out there that are choosing to stop and embrace this, to look at it, try to figure it out, as crazy as it is. And all of our weaknesses and all of our flaws, if what we know to be true, if we apply that knowing that consciousness is a real thing, like consciousness is real power, I wonder what would change in your life. I wonder what would change in mine. Something to think about. Something to think about. And, you know, of course, being a monster hunter is largely about trying to figure that out. Trying to embrace each other in a format that says, hey, I see you, I know who you are. I may not agree with everything you're saying. You know, there's a guy in the forums, his name's Kabiri Jester. I've known this guy forever. And he's one of these kind of people that when you talk to him, it's like an explosion goes off. The guy's just like 80 billion watts. So you're like, hey, and they're like, what? They like totally come at you with like 100 million ideas. There's people that are like that. And I love people like that. I do. Even though, you know, you can't engage with these people as much as you'd like, because, I mean, it would totally consume your world. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are like that have all this intensity and energy and brilliance, and they're just looking for a way to use it and do good with it, you know? Maybe individuals make bad choices. Maybe, you know, whatever. But you'll meet people that are that kind of Kabiri Jester. You'll meet that. You'll see everyone has a Kabiri Jester. Especially once you start trying to, you know, do things and get involved, you'll meet these people. And I think all of this is part of some sort of spectacle. Maybe not a master plan or a play or whatever, but it's the unknown. It's the here be dragons of the map of our reality right now. And you're a lot more important to it than you might know. Hey, after all, you know, dragons are monsters. And we hunt monsters.